Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Board Boys podcast. This is a bonus episode with the emphasis on Beau. This is Board Boy Rob here with...
Me.
Who's me?
Beau, just Beau.
Just Beau, huh?
Yeah, just Beau.
We were provided with a review copy of Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances core set and the 2 expansions that came with it. And Beau and I have been playing this quite a bit. At the end of this episode, there's going to be an interview that I did with Sean Fletcher, the designer of Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances. And we talk all about the game with him as well. To give a little background, Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances is designed by Sean Fletcher. The artist is not applicable, it says, and the publisher is The Op. It is a 1v1 skirmish battle game featuring a lot of your favorite characters from Disney IPs, and there's a lot to like about this game, I think. Beau, would you like to give your overview of what you kind of do in this game?
Yeah. So you're basically moving around the board with cards or just your basic movement, and hitting and attacking with your cards or basic movement. There's also a video game of this.
There is. It's based off an app game, a mobile game you can play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that all you got?
There's special powers that each character has. And then there's also symbols on the side. So every card gives you like one of those symbols, and those symbols can be used to do different moves and attacks.
Yeah, so the game is interesting in the fact that it has you learn the game through chapters. There's chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we started off, and we did all 4 of them, kind of learning it as we go. If you're doing that with, children, I think that's probably the best way to do it. And maybe even depending on the age, you don't want to go any farther than the first or second level skill-wise. The 3rd and 4th chapters add a little more to the game, which I think is really where the game plays best at, but it might be a little too much depending on the age of the kid.
Speaking of that, the symbols that I was talking about, sometimes I just don't understand them, like what you use them for.
Yeah.
The symbols on the side. We haven't really played with them yet, I don't think.
We did. You just didn't really get into them. I think
just none of us really used them.
I think that the loot icons on there where you could upgrade your character, or you basically just use them to upgrade characters, that was a little too much for you. Also, you didn't really use your character abilities too much. I think you liked the game enough just to the point where you could move your guys around, attack, and try to capture the bases to score points.
It's kind of like your average area control game.
I mean, kind of. It's more of a skirmish game, but you are trying to control 3 areas on the board. Because if you have those controlled, you get a point at the beginning of your turn, right? So the turns are pretty basic. You draw a card, and then you can do movement and action. And if you're playing in chapter 3 or 4, like the full game, you can do a skills phase. I'm going to give you the quick rundown on how you actually play the game. What you do is you set up a team 3v3. You can draft them, pick them however you want. You get your acrylic standees that are like, they're colorful and they're cool looking. And you set them up on your side of the board. And then you take these tokens that represent the characters as well, and you put them on the side of the board randomly. And depending on the order that they go in, and there's a way you could see who goes first, and then they get stacked in that order. But basically they get stacked so every person gets to go every other turn. And then after that is done, you put this active marker on the first player, and the first player takes their turn. You can draw a card, then you can do your movement, action, or skills phase. You can always move 2 standard-wise, or if you have a movement card, you can do whatever the movement card says. Or what's cool, but you can only use the cards in your hand of the character whose turn it is, unless you want to just discard it. Like, so if I have a movement card for Ariel and I'm moving Davy Jones, I could discard the Ariel movement card just to add one movement to my standard movement, which I think is cool. And I think they introduced that like in Chapter 2. I think that adds a lot to the game. I think Chapter 2 is really where the game shined for Beau, and 3 and 4 was maybe getting a little too much to really care about what was going on. Because you didn't care about as much, like keeping track of the character abilities was harder for you. You can also do an action phase, which most of that is attacking. You can do a standard attack. Same thing, you can discard any attack card out of your hand and add one to it, or you can play an attack card. And then the skills phase, if you're playing with the characters, they all have a skill. You can use their skill once per turn. Then you discard down to the maximum hand limit, and you end your turn. Some interesting thing is every character has how many points they're worth if they're destroyed, how many hearts they have to basically their life total, and then how many cards they add to your total hand limit. So most of them are 2, but some of them are 1 and some of them are 3. So you can kind of have different hand limits depending on the team you build, which I thought was a kind of a cool deal. So that's how you play Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances. And the base game comes with a bunch of characters, right? And then there's 2 expansions. One is the Thrills and Chills expansion, and one is the Turning the Tide expansion. And they just add 3 new characters each, and add them maybe like one little tiny wrinkle into the game. Unfortunately, you do need the base game to play with either of the expansions. The core set came with Sorcerer Apprentice Mickey, Gaston, Maleficent, Aladdin, Demona from Gargoyles, Ariel, Dr. Facilier, I think from The Princess and the Frog, and Sully from Monsters, Inc. The Thrills and Chills expansion comes with Jack Skellington, the Horned King from The Black Cauldron, and Mother Gothel from Tangled. And then Turning the Tide expansion comes with
Davy Jones, Stitch, and Moana.
Yep. And they're all really cool. It's fun. All the characters kind of play differently, and they kind of play like you would imagine their characters do. And I thought the ability things, like when you have an ongoing ability on a character, you kind of slot that into the side of the character's picture, and then you put the little tokens on it. I thought that was kind of a cool thing to keep track of who has what effect on them.
There's Curse. There's Curse.
There's all kinds. There's like one that makes you stronger.
Shrinking.
You know?
There is like one that makes it so they can only attack you for that round.
Yeah, there's like a
Cursed,
taunt.
Flustered, immobilized, magic broom, shrunken, stealthy, strong, taunt, and that was the one I was talking about, and tough.
Yep. And so those are all the different kind of characteristics, the status effects that the different characters can have on them. And I really like how those are applied to the characters and how you track those. I thought that was a neat system. I guess since we kind of just jumped right into it, let's keep going with pros. What else did you like about Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances?
I like that each character had their own like personality, like they had what they can do, and the effects on the characters, I feel like it connects to like a video game, that connects to a video game. That's why I like it.
So when we first got into it, we played Chapter 1, and I could tell you really were getting into it. You liked reading the cards, and being able to figure out what you could play to do what. And like Chapter 1, you really kind of understood that right out of the gate, right? You had a pretty good time playing that one?
Yeah. It was simple. That's the only thing I could say about it. And when it started to getting into like the 3 and 4 section, I started just getting like, I didn't really use the new things as much.
Yeah. Chapter 2 doesn't add a lot more. It just really added in the ability to play the card in the movement to like add the extra movement, or the attack to add the extra attack.
Yeah, so like if I was moving Jack Skeleton and there was a movement card in my hand for another person, then I could play that card down and it would add one more movement to Jack Skeleton.
Yeah, and the acrylic standees look great. The card art looks great. All the character sheets have all the information you'd ever gonna want on them on there, and there's lots of information about the character, and there's definitely some things that they could do with like extra expansions. I
Yeah.
think to like here, Mother Gothel is from Tangled, and she's a villain. And she also has the keyword kingdom. And so some of the parts of the game has something to do with if it's a villain, or if they're a kingdom, or they're a princess, or this or that. So depending on what they are, a different card might affect something differently.
The first time I played that game, I just thought that was for fun, but then when we started getting to play some cards down that were like affecting that, like do 5 damage to every princess.
I mean, I don't know that that's a real card,
Yeah,
but,
well,
but
Mother Gothel had a card that did like 3 damage to every princess.
you think so?
Yeah,
Somebody did. Somebody did something like
yeah,
that.
and it attacked your own character.
Yes, there is some friendly fire in the game.
Yeah, you
So-
would be doing that on accident.
That was interesting. So you got to pick your team kind of carefully sometimes, because some things say opponent, or they specifically mention opponent or rival, I think is the term. And then some cards just say everyone. So there is some friendly fire in the game. Once a character's knocked out, they just come back in the next round.
Yeah, they just spawn back in any 3 spawning points that there is in the back.
Yep. And the way you score points is by knocking out the other person's character.
And
Or
by getting on the area control sections with the crowns on them.
Yep. I don't know, is there any other pros here? I mean, we really like Disney. I think they could make like a million different characters for this.
Yeah, they could put like there's way too many possibilities that they can do. So they're probably going to make a lot more expansions when this game comes out.
All right, let's look into some cons here. I think my biggest con for the game was also kind of the components. I had a couple of the acrylic standees that didn't fit in the bases really well. I've got one that won't stick in there, so I might end up having to just glue them in there. I think it's Dr. Facilier.
Yeah.
He-
That also has to the figure standees that you're talking about. I mentioned this earlier that at the beginning of the game there's like these sheets on them so they don't get scuffed up, and you have to peel those off, and it's really hard to peel them off.
I will say it was really tedious and tough to peel off all the plastic on all these pieces.
So true.
And it was really hard to even grab an edge on them. I mean, you could leave them on, but they look way better with the plastic off.
Yeah.
Now, I will say the 2 expansion sets, which I think you didn't do any of those, Beau, those came with 2 pieces of plastic each on them, which sounds worse, but for some reason having both pieces of plastic on each side was easier.
It makes it thicker so you can pull off like
I wonder if they did that on purpose on the expansions to make it easier to kind of pull those off.
Oh, and also what were you talking about? Like I didn't take off any of the things for the expansion guys. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. One time I just played completely on the one time I just did completely what was the expansion, like the freight expansion or whatever?
You played the Thrills and Chills.
Yeah, I played all of the characters in there except Mother Gothel, and I added in Davy Jones. So basically, I went all creepy with it.
Yeah, you do like the creepy guys. I mean, other than that was kind of my biggest thing there. You can play this game in teams. So, I mean, the game is really only a 2 or a 4-player game, I think. So you can't play like a 3-way battle, which
I still don't see how the team thing would work.
You just alternate who goes, and I think you play 2v2.
Wait, so basically...
So, like...
Oh, wait, so one person plays and one person plays as the other?
Yeah, so you'd play with 8 total characters, 4 characters on a side, and each player gets to control 2 characters.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that could be fun. So here on the Board Boys podcast, we have a 3 Boeing ranking scale that we used in our final thoughts, and 3 Boeings being the best, and 0 Boeings being the worst, with half Boeings being allowed. So I think a 0 Boeing game would be your Disney Plus subscription just ran out, and you forgot to renew it. And the 3 Boeing game is, a version of this game is, I think, the new Mandalorian season just came out, and it is the best one yet. For my final thoughts on Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances, I think this was one of the first games, like strategic games, that I could see Beau really getting into, especially the first couple times we played it. He really liked reading the cards. He really could read the card and kind of know when to play what and figure that out, and I thought that was very cool. So for me, I think that this game, if I was playing it with Beau, I think, to be honest, at least at his age, and he's almost 9, we probably don't even need the character stuff. We'd play it at probably chapter 2, and that would be just fine. If I was playing this against another adult, I think we would definitely play the full game. It wouldn't be a big deal. And the full game, either way, I think this game's probably a 2 Boeing for me. It's right there in the middle. Like, this isn't super down my alley, and we've got a lot of games like this. Unmatched, I had and thought was okay, and kind of moved on from it. And we have the Funkoverse game with all the Funko Pop dudes, and those guys are really cool.
Yeah.
And now that Beau's liking this one, I'm kind of thinking about pulling that out to see and just compare this between these two.
What do you mean pulling it out?
To play it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Funkoverse is maybe got a little more going on than this one does.
One more thing I need to say is that my rating, did you tell them about that once in a video you can give a 4-scaled Boeings? You
can give a 4 Boeing, yep.
Just once.
Just one time ever.
This is my 4th Boeing.
What?
I loved the whole thing. The only con that I have about it is peeling the stuff off.
Okay, you're only 8, and you're giving us your 4 Boeing game?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you heard it here. He really likes this game. I'm surprised he hasn't pulled it off the shelf more to play it since he says he likes it so much.
Yep.
But to be fair, we have a lot of games here, don't we?
So true.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed the beginning of the podcast, stay tuned for the second part where I'm going to interview the designer of
Disney Sorceress Arena
Epic Alliances. Well, Beau, thanks for coming on the beginning of the podcast and doing another bonus episode. We had a lot of good feedback from the first one, so hopefully we can improve on these and kind of get your podcast voice going on here. And stay tuned for the second part of the podcast where I interview Sean Fletcher, the designer of Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances. I had a lot of fun talking with Sean, and I hope you enjoy the interview. I'm here talking with Sean Fletcher. You want to say hi, Sean?
Hi, how are you?
So you're the designer of Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances from the op.
Yes, I am.
I was kind of curious. I hadn't seen it in the local game store yet, or Target, or sometimes you see that around there. And then I was kind of looking online, and it looks like maybe it kind of came out around Gen Con time, like
Yeah, we
limited or.
launched just before Gen Con. We had the game out for demos at Gen Con. We played the core set. We played the first two expansions there, and it was an absolute blast. The reception we got at Gen Con was phenomenal. I might sound like I'm cherry picking the data here, but it seemed like everybody we played with at Gen Con came away from the game having a really good time.
It seems like, do you want to kind of just go over kind of how the game plays a little bit and the basic idea behind it?
Yeah, sure. So the backstory is that we at the Op have done a number of Disney games prior to this one, and the mobile team that created Disney Sorcerer's Arena, the the mobile game, came to us and they said, "Hey, you know what? We're tabletop game fans, but we don't make tabletop games, and you've done tabletop games, and you're Disney fans. How can we make this happen in a real world uh, board game space?" Um, so my boss looked at me and said, "Hey, you're obviously a gamer and you love Disney. Why don't you put this all together?" And so I did. I came up with a game that sort of captures the spirit of the mobile game, but adds that mobility and uh, real sort of 3D arena space where you can choose three characters from Disney and Pixar films and animated series, put them together, and then just go at your opponent's team, knocking each other out and scoring victory points. And with every character being designed to reflect their persona, you get some really interesting strategies where Sully can go in there and be, if you're familiar with MOBA games, Sully is your classic tank. He's in there to protect his allies, almost like a paladin character. And Mickey and Maleficent are magic users, though in different ways. Mickey's building up an army of magical brooms, as you would expect from the story of the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and Maleficent's out there just being, well, evil. She's casting spells and bringing down lightning on her rivals, and playing the way you would expect her to approach a battle arena.
Yeah, we've played it a few times now, and uh, they all kind of really do have a unique flair. The Mickey, the Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey, I think is his name.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting how he kind of likes to stack those tokens up and becomes more powerful as it
He's
goes. And then,
he's my favorite in the core game, and there's a real, I think the thing that appeals to me with him is there's a real strategy to figuring out when you want to stack those brooms up for the attack and when you want to hold off. Because he will lose all those brooms if he gets knocked out. So stacking them up when he's low on health means that you may have wasted some really good opportunities to wait a turn or two and then go in for like a 6, 7, 8 point attack with brooms.
yeah, just watching, I've been playing it with my 8-year-old son and just watching him kind of learn and grow and understand the strategy. And he at first he just wanted to run in with everybody because he doesn't really understand the difference between, Sully. He really liked Sully because Sully was, big and he had the most hit points and was worth a lot of points. Um, so he liked to run in there, and then he thinks it's fun to taunt with him. So he got the tank thing, and then he slowly understood that not everyone is a tank, and you have to, you know, like Mickey's a glass cannon, and you gotta be careful with him.
Yeah, there's definitely some finesse with a number of the characters, and there's a learning curve to kind of grasping how different they can be. And I think the fact that we have known characters in there helps really explain how those characters would play, because you go with Aladdin, and Aladdin is a stealthy thief. And so we played to his strengths there, and you go in there and you get that stealthy ability and you sneak through the crowds and steal cards from your opponent. And it really it evokes the flavor of the character in the gameplay.
Yeah, and speaking to that, I just wanted to mention the rule book has like a tiered teaching approach to it where you kind of play you can essentially play 4 games in a row kind of, and it kind of they build on each other. What gave you the idea to, teach and roll the game out that way through the
That's
rule
something
book?
that we'd used in a previous game, Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. And it's something that I think we'd like to continue doing, especially when we have games that are based on IPs that are going to be popular outside of just that core experienced gamer audience. So you want something for players who come in and say, you know what, I like Disney, I like games, let's try this out. And for the Disney fan that doesn't know a ton about hobby games or battle arena games, stepping them in gradually is really, really key to giving them an experience that they can enjoy and not feel overwhelmed with. And then knowing that you're building up to those 4 chapters, you're also giving a really deep strategic game to players that are there for the depth of strategy that a game like this can present, that also happen to be Disney fans.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to that. My son picked up game one where you only play with two characters and um, not a lot of extra rules, and he picked it up really quick. And I was kind of underwhelmed with game one, but I'm like, well, there's all this extra stuff we haven't done
Mm-hmm.
yet because I'm the experienced gamer. And then game two, just by tweaking a couple things where you can discard an extra card for an extra damage or an extra move, like that opened it up a lot. And then you introduce the actual character cards and the characters' individual abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how you mix and match them. Didn't see that coming where they each bring a different number of cards to your like total hand size too, which I thought was neat. And then
Yeah, we were able to
ultimately
do
at the
some really
end,
cool things with that. Like Gaston is just he's a big, dumb, punchy guy. So, we could reflect that in the hand size. If you're going to play Gaston to get that extra damage in there, you're giving up a little bit of your strategic play by having one fewer card.
yeah, I will say one of our favorite things is like just quoting the characters as we're playing, or like nobody fights like
Oh,
Gaston.
yeah.
Then we'll just start singing songs, and it's pretty fantastic. Just I mean, everybody loves Disney, right? And there's so many different characters. How much of the app game did you play to prepare for developing this game?
I sat down and chewed on the app for probably a good 3 weeks, and sort of broke it apart and deconstructed it to figure out what is there that makes this game fun and what can I bring to a tabletop, because there's a lot of stuff that really only works in the digital space in that mobile game. Um, so adapting it to the tabletop, we made slight changes like adding movement to the game so that you could have a tactical experience that doesn't quite exist in the mobile game. The mobile game is all about selecting your characters and timing your attacks. And this game, the tabletop game, has that as well. So we baked that into Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances, but also gave ourselves that spatial relationship that I think makes the strategic gameplay really rich.
Do you know what the decision to go with those acrylic standees where I really like them. The colors really pop. Just to do that instead of cardboard.
Yeah, yeah, that was something that came through with our creative and art departments. And I was there for the initial pitch when our creative director said, "Hey, you know what? I've seen this sort of game component technology sort of emerging, and I think we could do some really cool stuff with it." It just gives it such a crisp, such a colorful uh, look, and I think that when the decision came down to, do we go with something like miniatures or do we go with standees, um, the fact that we could take the art from the mobile game and make it look exactly like that mobile game art by going with the acrylic standees was a huge selling point for us, because it really is a fantastic art style that was already established. And as much as we could steer into that, we were going to try to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I had never heard of the mobile game before this, and so I kind of after taking a look at the tabletop game, I played the mobile game a little bit, and it, I recognized everything that I'd been playing on the table right away. So, those two play off each other. And then just scrolling through the list of unlockable characters, it seems like this is like limitless potential just to keep adding stuff to this game.
Yeah, there's like 180 something characters in the mobile game right now. So we've got plenty of mileage to get out of that as we add characters and expansions.
I haven't had a chance to look through the two expansions as much, just looking at the characters. Are there any different gameplay things that are, I mean, it looks like the characters might have, I saw some extra tiles in there, but is there any different rule sets or anything like that? I saw that the
Well, we
expansion requires the base game to play.
yeah, we added some new mechanics in there. Nothing that uh, changes the fundamental rules of the game, but things that sort of accentuate them and build upon them. So in the first expansion, we have arena tiles, and a lot of people after playing the core set say, "Hey, what can we do to modify the battle arena itself?" And so I answered that with ocean tiles in that first expansion. So Moana has the ability to put the ocean tiles in the play space, and that helps other oceanic characters move around faster and get into those tactical positions. On the flip side of that, Moana also has cards that benefit the more ocean tiles she has in the arena. So as you build out these ocean tiles, you can play either to using them right away for more mobility, or you can let them stack up for bigger card effects. And then in the second expansion, the Horned King is able to summon Cauldron-born tokens into the arena, which are sort of these little drone minion pieces that can clog the board for your opponent and get in the way, and eventually even attack on behalf of the Horned King himself.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, all the characters. The only character I didn't recognize out of all of it was the Horned King, but I've never seen the Black Cauldron, so I had to look
He's a
him up.
deep cut, and we're not afraid to go to those deep cuts. We had one in the core set. We went with Demona, just because we knew that there were going to be fans of gargoyles from the 90s,
Yeah, I did
and
recognize her.
being able to throw in a character here and there that comes from those deeper recesses of the catalog really gives us some exciting opportunities to show fans how far we're willing to go to give them interesting gameplay.
I just imagine, you turn on Disney Plus and just about anything on there might be close to fair game. So,
Mm-hmm.
I I think Lion King or Frozen would have some casters, I imagine, or I think is Darkwing Duck in the mobile game? I think he might
He
be.
is.
Yeah, I
He
thought I
is. And we
saw
get a
that.
lot of people asking, when do we get to see Darkwing Duck? So he's
Yeah,
a very popular request.
I was always a Darkwing Duck and DuckTales guy. So,
Yeah. Yeah, they're most of them are featured in the mobile game.
have you looked into like the gear icons on the cards seem to just be used to like upgrade your guy? Do you think there's room for expansion on the use of like the gear icons in the game?
There are characters still in development that I've played around with that, and I haven't quite cracked that nut yet, but it's definitely a space that I look at, and I refer to them as a game designer. I refer to them as coat hooks. It's something that's there that you might be able to hang a hat or a coat on later.
Sure.
And it's definitely one of those coat hook pieces of game design that I think about exploring quite often.
Oh, I wanted to talk about maybe the status effect system too. I thought that was pretty cool. Especially like the design of those where they kind of slide into the characters and then you have tokens and then they come off. Like the way the game flows and how everything's kind of present, I just think it all works very nicely.
We get a lot of compliments on that system, and it's funny because when I designed it, it was just sort of all right, well, I need some utility here. I need to show this some way. And it's not that different. What you see in the game now is not that different from what we built in the original, just plain cardboard prototypes. So it's always exciting to hear people say, you know what, I really like how this works, because it was just sort of I don't want to call it a placeholder, but it was just there for function at the start of the design, and it just carried through, and people like it.
I mean, it looks good and it really makes sense when you're just looking at the characters. You can see who's got affected by what and how long it's going to last. And it's interesting because I see a lot of the same, I'm guessing is on purpose, using a lot of the same card names and abilities that seem to be in the mobile game are also in the card game or the tabletop game.
Yeah, there's definite inspiration taken there.
So I noticed that the product seems available from the op website and a bunch of places online. Is it going to be like my local game store hadn't even heard of it, but then they said the Game Trade magazine this month had the cover
Yeah,
on it. So is it now just starting to roll out to like FLGSs or?
Well, FLGSs all across the country have been carrying it since it first debuted in, I want to say, May.
Oh, okay.
So if your FLGS doesn't have it, by all means, put in a request, encourage them to pick it up, because we'd love to see not only people having it available in their FLGSs, but it's the kind of game that you can sit down at a table at an FLGS and just start playing with friends, and building your own grassroots community that way.
Yeah. Uh, and as far as maybe getting it, do you think it'll show up in like mass market type places as well, like Target or Barnes and
I
Noble, like a
That's a question. That's a question for the sales team, well
sure,
above my
sure.
point in the company. But we'd love to see it everywhere that we can get it.
I mean, it seems accessible enough to kind of fill
And
that niche.
yeah, and that's really where the that chaptered learning system that you touched on really, I think, will shine. Is that fans of Disney that aren't already strategy gamers can pick this game up and just kind of run with it. And counter to that, you've also got there's a rule set posted on Board Game Geek. If you are a heavy strategy gamer and you hear, well, you got to go through these chapters, you don't have to. You can actually skip all those chapters and get the condensed rules for the full game up on BGG and just start right in and play the whole game,
Okay.
right from the start.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I noticed there was an FAQ up there too. Uh, that just had some like random questions on there, or like how maybe certain cards worked if people were interested in that as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
Um,
So before we break, I'd love to talk a little bit about the Ops Road to Gencon series, if that's okay with you.
yeah, I was just gonna ask you. It seems
Awesome.
like this game lends itself to a little bit of competition based tournaments.
Yes, and we have a whole series happening in 2023 called the Ops Road to Gen Con. It's going to be a 10-city stop all over the country. We've got stops in Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Anaheim, Orlando, Rochester, New York, and a couple of other cities that I don't have on the tip of my tongue. But we're building towards the World Championship at Gen Con this year. And if you play in any of the regional events, there's all kinds of cool prizes to win. There's some promotional pieces to add to your game. But the big prize is a set of passes to Gen Con, where we'll reserve a seat for you in the World Championship.
Oh, awesome. Um, it'd be great if this really catches on. It'd be nice to see that maybe rolled out to like maybe more local stores and more local events and things like that.
I'd love to see that.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to plug before we wrap it up?
Sure. If you enjoy Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances, I would encourage you to check out some of our other Disney games. We just put out Smash Up Disney Edition recently, and that one's a lot of fun. I got to work on that one a bit with Paul Peterson, the inventor of Smash Up. And then I would say follow us on social at the Op Games.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Sean, for being with us today. And we hope to see more Disney Sorcerers Arena Epic Alliance stuff in the future. It's been really fun playing with my son. This is the first battle game. Like we've had a few other ones, and he's gonna be a little too young to kind of start in it. I've been playing games with him since he was 2, and this is the first time that I've seen something click with him, and he was reading the cards and playing it and like, well, this does this and here's like he was really getting into it. So
That's awesome.
thanks for that. It was really cool. I think it was between the theme and the mechanisms just being so easy to wrap his head around. It was fantastic.
Well, thank you for playing.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right.
Thanks everybody for listening to that interview and my discussion here with Beau about Disney Sorcerers Arena's Epic Alliances. If you like what you heard and you want to keep hearing more, check us out at theboardboyspodcast.com. From there, you can get a bunch of links to a bunch of cool places. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have a Discord. Come hang out on the Discord. We have a Patreon, the Board Boys Patreon. You can get the link from theboardboys.com there. We have a few different levels. Hopefully we can start providing more cool, different content. We appreciate your support with that.
And this is Board Boy Beau signing off.
Until next time, we hope you like board games.
Yeah. Boing, boing, boing.